We have a lot of foreign policy news in the show today. This was another really significant move that I wanted to make sure did not get overlooked, as we, of course, have continued to focus on the possibility of nuclear Armageddon, which I would, dare say is an important focus, place for our show to focus these days. But the Biden administration making some significant moves with regards to China and those crucial semiconductor technology. Let's go ahead and put this tear sheet up on the screen from Bloomberg. They say no possibility of reconciliation as U.S. slams China chips. The Biden administration implemented sweeping new restrictions, and the U.S. move hampers China's efforts to develop domestic technology. Okay, what are we talking about here? Now, first of all, let me say that according to all the analysts, the devil is really in the details here over how this is all implemented. However, the Biden administration on Friday announced sweeping export controls on semiconductor technology to China. The idea is to sort of cripple Beijing's access to those critical technology. It's needed for a lot of things, but including sort of defense and guided weapons. So that seems to be what it is aimed at. Technology experts said the rules appear to impose the broadest export controls issued in a decade. This is per the New York Times. Similar to the Trump administration's crackdown on the telecom giant Huawei, the new rules are far wider in scope, affecting dozens of Chinese firms, and unlike the Trump administration's approach, which was viewed, this is the New York Times editorial, as aggressive but scattershot, that's probably fair characterization, the rules appear to establish a more comprehensive policy that will stop cutting-edge exports to a range of Chinese technology companies and cut off China's nascent ability to produce advanced chips. So the Chinese government has been really heavily invested in building up their own semiconductor industry, but they are still way behind the US, Taiwan, and South Korea in their ability to produce the most advanced chips. In fields like AI, China is actually, more at par with where we are, but in terms of semiconductor chip production, they are apparently behind. This is also crucial because it's really sort of broad reaching. So even companies that are overseas, like in Taiwan, for example, but rely on US technology are also subject to these export controls. The market is, and again, they add in these potential loopholes where basically like on a case-by-case basis, they can issue exemptions. So that's why analysts are saying like the devil's in the details and it depends how this is all ultimately implemented. But the markets are certainly reacting like this is a big deal and like it's going to be enforced in a quite an aggressive way. Let's go ahead and put this next piece up on the screen. I don't know if you guys followed this yesterday. The NASDAQ closed at a 2-year low on Monday. Hurt primarily by those slumping chip stocks. They say this comes, after the Biden administration announced those new export controls. And the NASDAQ's losses for the year are now greater than 32% after Monday's decline. The S&P 500 is off by 24%. And in terms of how much teeth this is ultimately going to have, this is the last piece here, Saagar, and I'll get your reaction. Taiwan has also signaled, let's go ahead and put this last piece up on the screen. Taiwan has also signaled their chip firms are going to follow these new U.S. rules, which again apply to them because they rely on some U.S. technology. So interesting development.
Yeah, I mean, this is the new gold, has been for a while. Frankly, this should have been policy for 10 years, 15 years ago. The idea that it took until 2022 and the idea that the Trump administration didn't do it just shows you how laughable they really were in the first place. It took Biden also nearly 2 years in office to get there. So look, let's not applaud anyone.
But he did get there.
He got there. Yeah. It's happening. I'm glad it's here. Unfortunately, and I do not want to be the Debbie Downer, everything I have read so far, Krystal, is that almost all of this is 10 to 20 years too late. Here is the very simple truth. Taiwan Semiconductors is 25 years ahead of the entire global populace. These machines and facilities are so sensitive, if a single human hair gets in the wrong place, the entire thing will shut down. Also, they work 24 hours a day. There's a great interview with the TSMC CEO, and they ask him a question. It's translated, but they're like, hey, so why did you beat America? And he's like, you people are lazy. He's like, we work 24 hours a day. He's like, we have our people on 8-hour shifts 3 times. The facility never shuts down. He's like, when you outwork somebody double, then you beat them. Very simple. Anyway, they are just magicians, essentially, that have the proper supply, workforce, technology, know-how. There's actually only a limited amount of executives in the whole world who even know how to do this. So look, I applaud the CHIPS Act, and I applaud this. The reason why America and China are posturing over Taiwan is because of TSMC's facility. And as much as I support the $50 billion in Micron and all those other new things that we're building here, we are over a decade away from any capability of producing anything.
I mean,
I just want to be honest with people. Like, it's true.
It's baby steps that we've been taking. I mean, clearly this has been a concerted effort and focus of the Biden administration.
I hope it works.
Clearly somebody in the administration gets that this is a big issue. It's a big vulnerability for us. And not just in terms of like military and defense and those sorts of things, but in terms of like electric vehicles. And if that's something you care about and like the future of, you know, the climate, and that's obviously a big push of the Biden administration as well, this, you know, you don't have that future if you don't ultimately have the chips to facilitate it. So one interesting thing, just a political note, J.D. Vance and Tim Ryan squared off in a big debate in Ohio last night. I saw lots of clips flying around. Matt Stoller, of course, one of our great partners here, was pointing out that it's quite notable that both Vance and Tim Ryan said they supported the CHIPS Act.
Yes,
which
absolutely.
I think, you know, I mean, just given how hardened and partisan everything is, the fact that you have any Republican going along with anything Biden has done shows you that there's at least somewhat of a bipartisan recognition that this is extremely important.
Don't forget that Intel is opening that facility in Ohio. So this is $25
jobs
billion
issue for them too.
It's also a jobs issue on top of, you know, American security. And I will say, look, on JD, like I've known the guy for a while and he does genuinely care a lot about the chips issue in particular. I think the point that is very important to underscore is that this is good, but the major geostrategic questions on what happens in the event of a Taiwan invasion are still unanswered and will not be answered now for a decade. And it's interesting, there's a lot of discussion right now in Taiwan about essentially creating a mutually assured destruction on the chips industry should they get invaded, where they just blow up the TSMC facility. And they're like, well, China's not going to get it, but neither is America. And look, I mean, the reality is it's such a sensitive facility in the first place that it's almost impossible. 92% of the world's most advanced chips come from there. And I think we should also all be honest, like, you know, this MacBook in front of me, where if there was a shutdown of TSMC, this would be the last one I'd be able to buy for probably 7 years. iPhones, get ready, folks. And look at what's happening in Russia. If conceivably the United States went to war with no TSMC, it is very likely, Krystal, that we would have to basically dismantle all of our camera equipment and turn it into the U.S. government. I mean, think about what happened in World War II.
You're talking about Russia's having to like pull them out of like washing machines.
I actually looked into that story. It's not necessarily, it has happened. It's unclear, but the truth is that they are cannibalizing some consumer electronics. Now, if we were to ever enter a war and they were no more TSMC, it is very likely the U.S. government would be like, oh, everyone has to turn in their consumer electronics in order to run our missile systems off of. Let's just be very real about the vulnerability that we face in the global supply chain right now. And why, I mean, I do scourge so many of these policymakers for what they've done to us over the last I feel on semiconductors the way that if you are a rightful German should feel about nuclear energy and about reliance on Russian gas. You're like, I cannot believe you people put us in this situation.
Let us get to this place.
Because that is the level of vulnerability. We just don't feel it yet because there hasn't been a crunch. We got a small taste in 2021. Our car companies lost $10 billion in revenue because of the chip shortage. $10 billion. That's, you know, a lot, but also not that much compared to what would happen with a total shutdown of the supply chain.
I mean, it's, it is that ultimately critical. And it's part of why, you know, Pelosi pulling her hawkish bullshit with regards to Taiwan and all these people who love to beat their chests. I'm like, do you have any idea what this would actually mean? Like, have you thought for 5 seconds about what this would mean for the world, what it would mean for us? And the answer, obviously, is no.
Bingo.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.